Hello, and welcome to Echoes of the Forgotten Earth, a place where curiosity doesn't rush but meanders, and where science feels less like dense formulas and more like gentle wonder. Tonight's thought experiment doesn't take flight so much as it descends. It asks us not to scan the stars or chase a far-off horizon, but to turn our gaze downward through soil, through stone, into the quiet spaces hidden within the planet we call home. What if the earliest true civilization, more than a cluster of storm-worn survivors, but a society in the real sense, didn't live on the surface at all? What if it lived below? It sounds like something from a faded adventure novel, or a tale traded in whispers late at night when lamps are dim and imaginations run loose. Still, the question clings, doesn't it? Because under our feet lies far more room than above our heads. We marvel at the sky's expanse, but the earth reaches down in strata we almost never see. And in those layers, is it possible that human life, organized, enduring, whole once made its home? Before we follow that thread, let me ask you something. Where are you listening from right now? Maybe you're in an apartment where traffic hums outside the window. Maybe you're in a quiet house, the only sound a refrigerator sighing in the background. Maybe you're already lying somewhere dark, eyes closed, letting the words ebb and flow. Wherever you are, picture this. Beneath you, not only dirt and rock, but corridors and chambers, an entire lacework of space where footsteps once rang out, where torches once threw flickers, where voices carried in long-forgotten tongues. And if this slow wandering settles your mind, or simply offers a welcome detour from the speed of the day, I'd be grateful if you tapped like, maybe subscribed, maybe shared this small pocket of calm with someone else. The more people who find these quiet walks, the more we can keep making them. So let's begin not with proof, but with curiosity, because civilizations beneath the ground, whether literal, imagined, or symbolic, have always pulled at us. Think back to the first cave mouth you ever saw. Maybe it was a photo, a movie, a comic panel rather than a real place. It feels different than a clearing or a shoreline. Caves draw you inward. They feel like thresholds to a second world, darker, quieter, almost untouched by time. And humans have always answered that invitation. Tens of thousands of years ago, our ancestors didn't just duck into caves for the night. They adorned them. Deep inside, they painted animals, symbols, scenes from their lives. That's not the behavior of people merely waiting out the rain. That's ceremony. That's belonging. Underground wasn't only a place to outlast weather. It felt important, almost sacred. And it wasn't only art. Early people stored harvests in pits cut into earth, kept water cool in stone-lined cells, and laid their dead beneath the soil. In that sense, our bond with the below ground is as old as civilization itself. We've always trusted it to hold what matters: our grain, our memories, our ancestors. But what if, instead of storing and decorating, people chose to remain? Not for a night, not for a single season, but for generations. What if a whole community decided that the surface was too uncertain and that true safety and stability lived beneath? Imagine waking, not to sunlight but to firelight, shimmering against stone. Imagine growing up with no horizon, your sense of space measured in the span of a cavern, your sense of time measured by routine rather than dawn and dusk. To us, it feels unnatural. To those born there, it would feel normal. It would feel like home. This isn't as outlandish as it sounds. There are places where people have lived partly below ground for ages. In Iran's deserts, communities relied on subterranean aqueducts and cool storage. In Turkey's Cappadocia, sprawling underground cities carved into soft volcanic rock sheltered thousands. Those weren't fantasies. They were pragmatic answers to danger, weather, and war. But what if that wasn't just a later adaptation? What if humanity's first try at civilization began there, below, not above? Think of the advantages: shelter from storms, insulation from heat and cold, concealment from predators and hostile bands. The surface is exposed, changeable, often perilous. Underground, change comes slowly. Temperatures hold steady. There's quiet. There's safety. For a group trying to endure long enough to become something more than scattered families, the Earth itself might have looked like the best roof imaginable. That, of course, raises practical questions. Food, water, energy. It's one thing to hide in caves, another to thrive in them. Yet nature shows us it isn't impossible. Fungi grow without sunlight, feeding on decay. Certain fish and insects live entire lives in darkness. Deep below, bacteria flourish by drawing energy from chemicals rather than light. Water threads through fractures in rock, pooling in underground streams and aquifers. If people learn to harness these to cultivate fungi, catch cave fish, use fire for warmth, cooking, and light, they might have woven a culture down there. Consider the children raised in such halls. For them, the sun would be more rumor than reality, maybe even a frightening one. Endless open sky might feel less safe than ceilings of stone and walls that never move. Their stories might not praise gods above, but warn of dangers upward, ready to punish anyone who strayed too close to the surface. And it wouldn't be only survival. It would be culture. Sound behaves differently in stone corridors. Music, chanting, ritual. Those echoes would swell in ways no surface village could replicate. Their tales would be lit, not by starlight, but by torch fire, shadows dancing along walls like living illustrations. So why haven't we uncovered undeniable evidence of such a people? Maybe because evidence underground ages differently. Tunnels fall in, chambers flood, sediment buries and erases. Wind and sand can uncover surface ruins. Underground collapses can lock sites away forever, making carved spaces look like nature's work. If a society thrived below us, the Earth may have kept its secrets. Still, the idea returns. Myths circle it again and again. Agartha, Shambhala, hollow Earth stories of hidden kingdoms far below. Sometimes peaceful, sometimes perilous. Maybe these are only the shapes imagination takes, but their repetition across cultures hints at something deeper. Maybe it's not that a literal underground empire existed. Maybe it's that we all feel the pull of the beneath. We sense that life there is not only plausible, but in some ways, inevitable. Modern science adds to that pull. Cave expeditions keep turning up life where none was expected, microbes surviving in dark, strange insects adapted to total blackness, ecosystems that thrive without sunlight. Each discovery whispers the same thing. Life does not need the sky. It can settle for far less. From there, it isn't hard to stretch one more step. Perhaps our first true civilization wasn't a cluster of sunlit huts, but a lattice of rooms beneath them. Perhaps our story didn't begin with sky overhead, but with stone on every side. There's humility in that idea, isn't there? We like to see ourselves as creatures of light. We admire stars, raise towers, climb mountains. Maybe our roots were darker, quieter, more hidden. If so, even as we reach outward, we carry a piece of that hidden past with us. This thought isn't an ending. It's a door. We'll wander more deeply into why humans imagine concealed worlds, how myths of subterranean realms have shaped us, and what science has learned about life below. Because the question isn't only whether such a civilization ever existed, it's why the idea still matters so much. If the vision of a civilization underfoot feels natural to conjure, it's worth pausing to ask why. Why do we keep spinning stories about worlds just out of sight, far inside mountains or down in caves? Why is it easier to believe in a lost city beneath the ground than one floating in the sky? It seems our imagination has always had a special relationship with what's below us, a fascination as old as recorded history and likely older. Part of the reason is simple. The underground is mysterious. For most of our existence, the surface was already risky predators, storms, rival groups, sudden shifts in the land. But at least you could see it. You could read clouds, scan horizons. The beneath was unknowable. Step into a cave and the light dies. Shadows steal your sense of direction. One wrong turn and you're lost. To early humans, that wasn't just unsettling, it was terrifying. And fear feeds imagination. When we can't see, we populate the dark with stories. Picture the first person stepping in with a burning branch. Every flicker would have thrown odd shapes across the walls. Echoes would bounce back strangely. Something would move, bat, or shadow. It would be easy to believe something lived there. something unseen, older, maybe wiser, maybe dangerous. From that blend of dread and wonder, stories sprout, and stories stick. Once you speak of spirits or gods in the deep, the cave becomes more than stone. It becomes a gateway. It becomes an entrance to another realm. Children hear, repeat, pass it down. The idea spreads, cemented not only by mystery, but by the emotions caves evoke for each new generation. Psychologists tell us we're pattern seekers. We dislike blank spaces in our knowledge. We fill gaps with narrative. The underground is the biggest gap. It hides everything. We see only as far as the flame. Past that, the unknown rarely stays empty. The mind populates it with societies, monsters, ancestors, deities. But it isn't only fear. The underground also whispers safety. Archaeology says caves offered refuge from storms, from predators, from enemies. A cave is easier to defend than an open field. It's enclosed, steady, predictable. That dual nature fear and safety makes the beneath strangely magnetic. It's both menace and comfort. No wonder our imagination lingers there. Across cultures, myths describe entire worlds below the surface. In Greek myth, the underworld wasn't just gloom. It was organized a realm with rulers, rivers, regions. The Maya told of Xibalba, a vast underground domain where souls faced trials. Norse stories imagined worlds beneath the roots of the great tree. In Buddhist and Hindu legends, there are hidden realms like Shambhala, places of wisdom tucked beneath mountains, waiting for the right moment to appear. The details shift. The theme doesn't. The underground isn't empty. It's meaningful. Why would minds across continents converge on such a theme? Some scholars point to burial. When we place our dead in the ground, we tie the beneath to the afterlife. The earth receives the body. It must also be the threshold to something beyond. Once that link is forged, the underground becomes fertile soil for myth. Not only a resting place, but a root for souls, a home for gods, maybe even a refuge for civilizations far from our sight. But there's more. If you live exposed to the elements, the idea of a steady, hidden refuge is appealing. If storms wrecked your crops, if predators struck in the open, the fantasy of an enclosed, safe world below is comforting. Myths of hidden realms might be less about death than about security, collective dreams of withdrawing from chaos to a place danger can't reach. There's also the shock of discovery. Human history is filled with moments when someone stumbled into a cave of wonders, stalactites and stalagmites like frozen falls, mineral walls glittering, chambers vast as cathedrals. Without science to explain them, such places would feel otherworldly. Of course, you'd guess that gods made them. Of course, you'd imagine beings unlike yourself lived there. A single awe-filled encounter could seed entire imagined societies. Then there's memory. Many cultures carry their history by word of mouth, reshaping stories each time they're told. A tale of wading out a storm in a cave can become, over centuries, a tale of ancestors who lived wholly underground. Small truths swell into myths. Eventually, they outrun whatever practical moment sparked them. By the time the story reaches us, it's become a saga of hidden kingdoms and mysterious peoples, far from its source. Modern psychology adds another thread. We're drawn to opposites: light and dark, heaven and hell, surface and below. These paired ideas help us make mental maps. If the sky becomes a realm of gods or ancestors, we instinctively balance it with an underworld. One realm above, one below. It satisfies our sense of order. So even if no city ever truly thrived underground, the idea still serves a symbolic role. It balances the stories we tell about existence. Think, too, of childhood. Kids dream up forts and hideouts, dens and tunnels. The underground is a natural stage for those fantasies. Even in play, we wonder what it would be like to live below. Maybe that instinct is the faint echo of something older, a survival trait from ancestors who found safety underground. Literature, and later, science fiction, have kept the spark alive, from Jules Verne's journey to Earth's core, to contemporary films and games. Each new story adds a layer to our shared imagination. At this point, the underground civilization is almost its own genre, an idea we recognize whether or not we take it literally. Belief is slippery, though. Most people dismiss hollow earth theories or Agartha as fanciful. They still linger. They still attract attention. Maybe that's because, deep down, we know how little we've explored below. We've mapped Mars more thoroughly than our deepest caves. When so much remains unseen, imagination fills the blank spaces. Hidden worlds remain possible, maybe not likely, but hard to rule out. Geology lends a hand, too. Sinkholes open suddenly, swallowing roads and buildings. Lava tubes stretch for miles, ready-made tunnels in stone. Underground rivers carve passages no one finds until chance brings them to light. Each discovery feels like a reminder. The Earth still surprises. Something more could be hiding beneath. In that sense, myths of hidden civilizations aren't purely irrational. They're extensions of real experiences of stumbling into vast, unexpected spaces below. We're also drawn to secrecy. We love the idea of something existing in plain reach, unnoticed. That's why hidden rooms and secret passages fascinate. The underground is the ultimate secret literally underfoot, ignored in daily life, yet roomy enough to hide almost anything. To imagine a civilization there is to indulge in secrecy on a grand scale, and the below-ground toys with our senses. Spend a few minutes in a dark cave and your mind starts to misbehave. Sounds echo oddly. Time feels warped. Without the sun, hours blur. That shift in perception makes caves feel like separate realities. Stepping back into daylight is like crossing between worlds. It's not a stretch to believe that someone could remain on the other side, never returning, building a life that feels entirely distinct. Even our language betrays the fascination. We go underground to hide. We call secret movements underground. We'll talk about underground scenes for subcultures. The metaphor is everywhere, linking what's hidden, alternative, or unseen with what lies below. That constant link only strengthens the pull to imagine entire societies beneath our feet. So why do we imagine hidden worlds? Because they solve several needs at once. They explain mysteries, they offer comfort, they balance our symbolic maps, they satisfy our appetite for secrets, and they remind us the Earth is still strange. Even if we never prove an ancient subterranean civilization existed, the fact that so many cultures imagined one tells us something important. We crave the belief that there's more than meets the eye, that reality has layers beyond what we can see. And maybe, just maybe, those stories aren't entirely wrong. Because even if the underground isn't hiding a forgotten city, it is hiding untold forms of life we barely understand. In that sense, our imaginings are always justified. Beneath our feet, whole worlds remain unseen. There's something about caves and darkness that calls to us, even as part of us wants to retreat. It isn't a simple attraction. It's a blend fear, curiosity, a peculiar strangeness few other places spark. You can walk into a forest and feel wonder, or stand at the ocean and feel awe. But stepping into a cave is different. The moment daylight drops away, your senses shift. Sight narrows, sound grows heavy. Every drip echoes. Every change in air feels alive. It's as if the cave itself is watching, listening, waiting. That's part of the charm. For our ancestors, caves were sanctuary and test at once. They offered protection from weather and predators, but they also came with risk. You could get lost, hurt, trapped, and still, people kept going back. Some of the oldest art we know was created deep inside them. Imagine what that means. These weren't decorations for daily living. They were dangerous trips fire prepared, companions gathered, just to leave images far from light. That effort suggests caves mattered beyond convenience. They were set apart, places where everyday rules loosened. Darkness has always shaped imagination. Without light, the brain shifts gears. Vision, our dominant sense, becomes unreliable. The mind fills gaps with possibilities. In total dark, you can see forms that aren't there, hear sounds with no source, feel watched in solitude. It isn't just ancient people. Even today, time distorts in deep darkness. Mild hallucinations aren't uncommon. The brain doesn't like lack of input, so it makes its own. Caves become stages where stories of spirits, monsters, and hidden societies feel at home. But it isn't only fear or trickery. Caves soothe, too. They're quiet. The surface's clamor, wind, rain, predators, rivals falls away. In a cave, there's consistency. The temperature holds, walls protect, fire can be controlled. For those hungry for order in a tumultuous world, that steadiness was priceless. Caves are paradox, frightening and comforting, disorienting and grounding. That edge is what draws us. Psychologists might call it the edge effect. Humans are drawn to boundaries, places where one world shifts into another. Shorelines, where land meets sea, feel special. The edge of a forest, where field turns to shadow, catches our attention. Caves are another boundary, maybe the most dramatic. They're the line between light and dark, safety and risk, known and unknown. Standing at the entrance, we feel both urges, the pull to venture further and the urge to turn back. Caves are symbolic too. Across cultures, they're linked to rebirth. Stepping out of a cave can feel like emerging from a womb. Some myths place heroes' births or transformations there. Darkness becomes a necessary phase, go in, change, come out different. That symbolic layer helps explain why caves still captivate long after they stopped serving as shelters. Their physical beauty doesn't hurt. Over thousands of years, drop by drop, stalactites and stalagmites sculpt landscapes unlike anything above ground. Minerals glow in torchlight. Underground rivers carve chambers like cathedrals. You can imagine early humans feeling exactly the same awe we do. Such hidden beauty reinforces the sense that caves are more than geology. They feel like secret worlds revealed only to those brave enough to step into darkness. The animals add to it. Bats, blind fish, insects designed for total dark. To those without science, such creatures must have felt uncanny. How does life exist without light? How can fish have no eyes? The underground seems to obey different rules. If life bends so strangely here, then maybe whole societies could bend too. Time itself feels different below. Without daylight, there are no natural markers. An hour can vanish or stretch. The silence, the steady drip, the permanence of stone, it all makes time slow or stop. That timelessness adds to the otherworldly feel. It's easy to believe that a cave is a place apart. Somewhere, history doesn't apply. Somewhere civilizations could exist outside the surface's flow of time. Today, we still feel that draw. People travel to explore caves. For science, yes, but also for adventure. Caving, spelunking, underground tourism, all feed the same impulse, to see what lies past the light, even when it scares us. Entire communities of enthusiasts map and document, sometimes risking their lives to go deeper than anyone before. They seldom find anything beyond stone, water, and air. Still, the possibility hangs on. Maybe the next chamber will be different. Maybe the next passage opens into a secret world. This allure explains why so many myths place hidden societies below rather than above. We know the sky. It's vast and open and has been visible to everyone forever. It holds mystery, but not secrecy. The below ground can genuinely conceal. You can walk above a hall and never know it's there. You can live your whole life without realizing a network sprawls underfoot. That capacity for secrecy makes the underground a perfect canvas for imagination. Even our everyday phrases nod to the draw. We talk about diving into the depths in search of truth, about buried thoughts, about going into the dark to face fears. These words show how deeply caves and darkness live in our minds, not just as places, but as metaphors for the unknown parts of ourselves. Maybe the allure also lies in contrast. We flood our lives with light. The sun rises. We extend day with lamps, screens, streetlights. True darkness is rare. Caves remind us what it feels like to be without it. They sharpen our hearing, our sense of touch, our awareness of breath. They strip away distraction. For some, that's terrifying. For others, grounding. Either way, it's unforgettable. In a sense, caves are mirrors. They reflect back our imagination, our fears, our longings. We bring our stories with us, and the cave gives them shape. A drip becomes a heartbeat, a shadow, a figure, an echo, a voice. Soon the cave isn't just rock, it's alive with meaning. That's why an underground civilization feels plausible in imagination, even without evidence. Caves already feel like places where other realities could exist. They invite belief that something more waits, hidden. When tales describe vast kingdoms beneath mountains or wise societies in secret caverns, they're riding that natural allure. Darkness might be the strongest part. Darkness subtracts detail, but in that subtraction, it gives the mind freedom. When you can't see what's there, you can imagine anything. Darkness isn't empty. It brims with possibility. And that possibility is endlessly compelling. When people across history tried to explain the world's mysteries, they often lifted their eyes to the stars. But just as often, they lowered them to the earth itself. The ground underfoot wasn't only soil and stone. It was a threshold. In the ancient imagination, caves were not empty hollows. They were doorways, corridors, whole kingdoms concealed beneath. And from that sense grew some of humanity's most enduring myths. Realms below, filled with gods, spirits, and sometimes entire societies. Consider the Greeks. Their underworld wasn't a vague shadowland. It had structure. Hades wasn't simply darkness, it was mapped in story. With rivers like Styx and Lethe, a ferryman named Charon, judges weighing the fates of souls, regions set aside for punishment and for peace. To step into certain caves was, for many, to stand at the margins of that realm. Places like the Necromantean of Epirus were treated as entrances where mortals might speak with the dead. These weren't metaphorical journeys in the minds of those who made them. They were thresholds, physical places where the living brushed against a world beneath. The Romans inherited and elaborated these ideas. They, too, honored portals to the dead in sacred pits and caves. In the Roman Forum, the mundus opened only on particular days was believed to allow spirits to pass between worlds. It was a ritual reminder that beneath the ordered noise of empire, another domain persisted, silent, powerful, unseen. Cross the ocean and listen to the Maya. Their stories speak of Xibalba, a formidable underworld ruled by deities and trickster spirits. Heroes descended into that hidden place to face trials of darkness, cold, jaguars, and fire. Caves across the Maya region were seen as literal mouths of Xibalba entrances to a realm as structured and vivid as the villages above. Archaeology supports the belief. Offerings, carvings, and signs of ritual lie deep within. Those chambers weren't storerooms, they were gates. In Norse tradition, the underground was equally central. The great world tree, Yggdrasil, sank roots into realms of frost and serpents, ancestors and ancient forces. Niflheim world of mist and cold lay beneath, balancing a cosmos with gods above, humans in the middle, and other powers below. The earth wasn't a flat stage, it was layered, and each layer had its own inhabitants. In Hindu and Buddhist traditions, we find tales of hidden realms like Shambhala, sometimes imagined as tucked within mountains, sometimes within the earth itself. These weren't pits of punishment, they were reservoirs of wisdom and peace. The underground in these stories was not hellish, but utopian. Some legends say that when the world falls into greed and disorder, the people of such realms will emerge to restore balance. Entry is not merely a matter of maps, but of merit accessible only to those spiritually prepared. Across the Americas, many native traditions carry echoes of underground origins. The Hopi, for example, tell of prior worlds below, each destroyed or transformed until people climbed upward through openings to our present world. In this view, the beneath isn't only where the dead travel, it's where humanity itself began. A womb of stone and darkness that birthed life above. In China, Taoist and Buddhist texts sometimes speak of hidden kingdoms within mountains, paradises protected from surface chaos. These places were imagined not merely as escapes, but as preservers of wisdom, tucked out of time's reach. The underground becomes not just a realm of danger or death, but a vault, a library awaiting the right moment to open. What's striking is how these myths, separated by ocean, era, and language, share certain ideas. The beneath is populated, not barren, Structured, not shapeless. There are entrances humans can find, caves, sinkholes, sacred pits. Those entrances matter. They're treated with ritual, fear, or longing. Some myths stress punishment, others promise wisdom and safety. Either way, the underground is meaningful, a mirrored world that follows rules distinct from our own. Why the convergence? Some reasons are familiar. Burial links the beneath to afterlife. Practical use of caves for shelter and ritual ties the underground to sacredness. And darkness, being unknowable, invites story. Once a tale is told about what lies below, it becomes oddly persuasive. No one can easily disprove what they cannot see. The persistence of these myths suggests underground realms meet a deep storytelling need. They explain death, offer hope, deliver caution. They give shape to a layered universe full of unseen forces. And in imagining them, the ancients weren't so different from us. They were asking the same question we're asking now. What if life organized, meaningful life exists beneath the ground? When people talk about hidden civilizations below, a handful of names return again and again. Shambhala, Agartha, the Hollow Earth. These aren't fleeting stories. They've become anchors for whole traditions of belief, literature, and speculation. Each has shifted across centuries, twining spiritual teachings, folklore, and pseudoscience, and together they show how far imagination is willing to dig in search of something larger than ourselves. Shambhala is perhaps the best known. In certain Buddhist traditions, it's a hidden kingdom of peace and wisdom existing beyond ordinary maps, sometimes placed in the Himalayas, other times described as a realm that's both physical and spiritual, available only when the world is ready. The Kalachakra Tantra, a significant Tibetan text, treats Shambhala not merely as legend but as a realm with a role to play in history. One prophecy says that in a future age overcome by greed and chaos, Shambhala's people will emerge to restore balance. What compels about Shambhala is how it blends a hidden place with an ethical test. It's not just concealed geographically, it's concealed morally. Only those prepared can find it. That makes it less a lost city to stumble upon and more a state of readiness. Even so, travelers among Himalayan ranges have been asked if they're seeking it. Stories point to distant peaks and secret valleys that might conceal a kingdom. In the 19th and 20th centuries, as the West's fascination with Eastern thought grew, novels, films, and spiritual movements began treating Shambhala as both a real place and a metaphor for human potential. Agartha is related but distinct. Often blended with Shambhala, Agartha is said to be an underground realm connected by tunnels spanning the globe. In some versions, Shambhala serves as its capital. In others, they're separate places that sometimes overlap in story. Agartha, in many accounts, houses advanced beings who live in peace, occasionally guiding or nudging surface humanity. Interest in Agartha surged in late 19th century Europe when occult writers described it as a vast subterranean kingdom inhabited by enlightened masters, guardians of ancient wisdom preserved from lost civilizations like Atlantis or Lemuria. In these tales, Agartha glows with its own light, powered by unknown energies, populated by beings who've moved beyond ordinary human limits. For people enduring industrial upheaval and war, such a refuge was deeply appealing, a place untouched by greed where wisdom endured. Then, there's the Hollow Earth, a theory that scales the myth up to planetary size. Instead of hidden kingdoms and scattered caverns, it suggests the entire planet is hollow within containing immense spaces, maybe even oceans and continents, lit in some versions by a small inner sun. Some say great openings at the poles connect interior to exterior. The idea isn't new. In the 17th century, astronomer Edmund Halley proposed that Earth might be layered with concentric shells, a speculation to explain odd compass readings. His proposal opened doors to later imaginings. By the 19th century, writers and explorers were captivated. Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth imprinted the idea on popular culture. In the years since, fringe theorists have kept it alive, claiming governments hide polar openings or that mysterious lights in the sky prove inner worlds. For those who take Shambhala and Agartha literally, the Hollow Earth becomes geography, a vast interior where those civilizations may reside. Skeptics, of course, point to geology. Seismic data maps Earth's layers, crust, mantle, outer core, inner core. There is no room for planetary hollows. But myths aren't bound by physics. They're bound by what resonates with us, our hopes and fears. And what resonates here is the dream of hidden perfection. The surface is chaotic, violent, unpredictable. Maybe, just maybe, there's a place beneath it all where order and wisdom prevail. Maybe the true story of humanity is being guarded in silence, waiting for the right time to emerge. It's worth noticing how these legends adapt to their time. In ancient Tibet, Shambhala served as a spiritual anchor, proof that enlightenment was possible even in turmoil. In 19th century Europe, Agartha mirrored obsessions with lost worlds and esoteric knowledge. In modern conspiracy culture, Hollow Earth offers a broad canvas for suspicions about secrecy and influence. Details change. The core stays the same. There's more beneath us than stone. Geography helps keep these ideas alive. The Himalayas shelter valleys and caves that remain unexplored. Earth's crust is riddled with tunnels, lava tubes, and caverns stretching for miles. We know they're natural, but they still feel like evidence that the planet has room for more. Hear about a cave system that extends beyond what's been mapped. And it isn't hard to imagine it linking to something larger, something secret. Tales of explorers stumbling into entrances maps gone missing, expeditions that never returned, add weight. True or not, such stories feed the feeling that these places could exist. After all, how much of Earth's interior have we really seen? We've dug deep, but compared to the planet's full depth, we've barely scratched. The unknown leaves space for belief. So Shambhala, Agartha, and the Hollow Earth endure not as proven geography, but as living stories. They let us imagine perfection and secrecy, wisdom and wonder, all at once. They let us believe we haven't found everything, that just out of reach, there might be societies better than our own, preserved in stone and shadow. Whether we take them as myth, metaphor, or possibility, they keep shaping how we think about what lies beneath. And when we ask what it would mean if the first civilization lived underground, we're joining a long conversation, one carried by monks and storytellers, explorers and dreamers. In that sense, these legends are about more than what might be hidden below. They're about the continuity of human imagination itself. To picture a people truly living beneath the surface, we have to ask a basic question. Could human life work without sunlight? The sun is so woven into our existence that it feels inseparable. We wake with it, measure our days by it, rely on it to grow food, and yet, if we look closely, life without sunlight isn't just possible. It's already happening in places we seldom notice. The underground teems with examples showing how life adapts to total dark. The first challenge is food. On the surface, plants convert sunlight to energy. Take away the sun, and that familiar chain collapses. But not all life follows that chain. In caves, fungi and bacteria thrive without photosynthesis, feeding on organic matter carried in by water or animals. Some bacteria survive on chemical energy alone, drawing nutrients from minerals. Entire ecosystems deep below are sustained by chemosynthesis, energy from chemical reactions rather than light. Far out at hydrothermal vents in the deep ocean, life blooms in perfect darkness. Giant tube worms, crabs, strange fish all living off the chemical energy pouring from the vents. Those ecosystems prove life doesn't require the sun. It requires an energy source and a way to use it. If nature can build entire communities in those conditions, it's not hard to imagine humans finding ways to adapt too. Humans can't live on minerals or microbes alone. But early underground people could cultivate fungi, farm insects, or domesticate cave-adapted animals. Mushrooms grow in darkness on compost, wood, or soil. Insects, crickets, beetles can turn scraps into protein. Fish in subterranean rivers can be caught, even raised. It wouldn't look like surface agriculture. No fields of grain, no herds under open sky. It would be smaller, stranger, more fragile but workable. Water is another question, but the below ground isn't dry. Aquifers thread beneath continents. Water drips into pools, gathers into rivers. People could collect and store it, filtering through natural means. Many ancient surface societies already relied on underground channels, khanats in Persia, to bring water to fields. Knowledge of hidden water is as old as civilization. Light is trickier. Fire offers warmth and illumination, but smoke suffocates in tight spaces. Still, our ancestors were resourceful. Soot marks in French caves show how deep artists once walked with flame. They found ways to work by fire without choking. An underground society might have discovered how to vent smoke through cracks, or how to shape chambers so airflow pulled fumes away. Over time, they could rely less on flame and more on glowing materials. Some minerals gleam under the right conditions. Certain fungi emit faint light. Bioluminescent insects and fish exist now. It isn't far-fetched to imagine people cultivating sources of natural glow. Then there's health. Without sunlight, we lose natural vitamin D. But food fish, eggs, mushrooms can supply it. Perhaps underground societies leaned heavily on those. Over generations, bodies might adapt skin tone, metabolism, even physiology shifting to suit their world. We've documented how cave animals lose pigment, shrink their eyes, and lean on chemistry for energy. Humans change more slowly, but given time, we'd develop traits tuned to long night. What about the mind? Light anchors our internal clocks. Without it, circadian rhythms drift. Experiments show people in caves shift to longer or drifting cycles. But a society living entirely underground could build its own rhythm organizing around work, meals, and rest, unmoored from the sun. Clocks and rituals could substitute for dawn and dusk. In some ways, it might even feel liberating, a chance to shape time by choice. Challenges wouldn't stop there. Surface agriculture produces surpluses that feed large populations. Underground systems would be harder to scale. But civilization doesn't have to look like ours to count. A smaller, tightly knit community could thrive on careful balance and deep knowledge of place. The psychological effects of darkness would be profound. Humans crave light and space. Underground life could feel cramped and isolating. Yet for those born to it, darkness would be normal. Children who never saw the sun wouldn't miss it. They'd find comfort in unchanging walls, in predictable halls, in community woven through close quarters. Their myths might warn that the surface is dangerous, chaotic, cursed. The beneath would be home. Modern technology makes the vision less far-fetched. We already build underground bunkers, subways, even city districts designed to beat harsh weather. Places like Montreal and Helsinki have networks of shops and passages below street level. If we can do this now, ancient societies could have found simpler, effective ways to live below. And when we remember how much space the Earth offers underground caves running miles, lava tubes big enough for buildings, sinkholes opening into stadium-sized rooms, the idea starts to feel almost expected. So could life without sunlight work? The evidence suggests yes. Not easily, not without adaptation and cleverness, but yes. Fungi, insects, fish, bacteria prove ecosystems thrive in darkness. Ancient people proved caves supported art, ritual, and survival. Today's examples prove underground living is possible with planning. Put it together, and you see a world where human civilization could anchor itself beneath the surface out of the sun, out of sight, quietly sustaining itself for generations. And if such a society endured, we might never know. A civilization below would leave few traces above. Its history could remain sealed in stone, its stories told only by those who lived them. If we want to picture people living underground, the first step is to notice what nature is already doing there. Long before humans thought to carve tunnels or hollow out rooms, the world below our feet was alive, and it still is. You could argue that most of Earth's living space is hidden beneath us: soil and bedrock, water-filled pockets, the deep crust. These are habitats we rarely think about, yet they teem with creatures proving that life in darkness is not just possible, but successful. Start with something as ordinary as soil. Scoop up a handful, and you're holding an entire metropolis. Bacteria, fungi, nematodes, mites, tiny insects, all living, eating, reproducing, and dying in a world invisible to the eye. Billions of organisms can inhabit a single handful. They break down matter, recycle nutrients, keep everything moving. It's a reminder that while sunlight powers the green world above, the energy stored in plants and animals trickles downward to feed layer after layer of life below. Go deeper, into caves, and the communities grow stranger. Some are sealed off for millions of years and evolve in ways we don't expect. Blind fish navigate with sensitive skin. Wingless insects rely on touch and vibration. Pale crabs feed on bacterial growth rather than plants. Entire food chains exist without ever seeing the sun. One famous example is Mobile Cave in Romania, closed off for around 5 million years. Its air is thick with hydrogen sulfide, lethal to most surface creatures, yet bacteria there create energy from chemicals, not light. Those bacterial mats feed worms, spiders, and other adapted creatures. It's a functioning ecosystem, self-sustaining, sunless. Movile isn't the only lesson. In the deep ocean, far from any light, hydrothermal vents support exuberant life. Bacteria harvest energy from chemicals spilling out of the vents, and those bacteria, in turn, support tube worms, clams, crabs, and fish. When scientists first found these communities, they were stunned. The discovery broke a long-standing assumption. Sunlight is not the universal rule of life. Where energy exists, life will find a way. Deeper still, in fractures of the crust, scientists have found bacteria and archaea living kilometers below the surface, enduring crushing pressure and heat, feeding on trace chemicals in rock. Some grow so slowly their life cycles stretch across centuries. They aren't bustling like the surface world, but they prove life persists where we once thought it couldn't. It isn't only microbes. Larger animals have adapted to underground life. Bats roost in caves and emerge at night to feed. Moles and naked mole rats spend nearly their entire lives in tunnels of their own making. Cave-dwelling salamanders live in underground pools. Some species never develop eyes at all. These aren't temporary strategies. They're full lifestyles, passed down through generations. Plants, in their own way, lean on underground strategies too. Roots reach into soil, forming expansive networks. Fungi knit those roots together in a wood-wide web, trading nutrients and information. Leaves rely on sunlight, but much of a plant's true work happens below, hidden from view. That underground collaboration sustains whole forests, reminding us the subterranean world is not a wasteland, it's a foundation. Put all of this together and a pattern emerges. Nature already thrives under the very constraints we imagine for an underground civilization: limited light, unusual energy sources, isolated habitats. Life has solved these problems many times. If blind fish can navigate with touch and microbes can persist kilometers down, it doesn't seem far-fetched that humans, with creativity and culture, could adapt as well. There's resilience here too. Surface ecosystems can be undone quickly by storms, fires, droughts. Underground systems tend to be steadier. They change slowly, buffered from weather and many disasters. That stability is part of why myths about hidden societies feel plausible. If life could endure quietly for centuries without notice, it would be below. Another shift occurs when we consider scale. Above ground, we think of forests and oceans as the giants. Underground, the giants are microbes. They outnumber and outweigh everything else. By some estimates, the total mass of microbes beneath the surface exceeds that of all plants and animals combined. The underground isn't a fringe, it's a main stage, and we're only beginning to understand it. Drilling projects keep finding organisms deep in rock layers. Some barely stir. Others form communities feeding off trace chemistry. Scientists call it the deep biosphere. Immense, diverse, persistent. This makes the idea of underground civilizations feel less like fantasy and more like a question of scale. If microbes and small animals already live in hidden worlds below, why not larger beings? Why not us? Given the right adaptations, nature has already provided the template. We would simply be one more variation. In a way, we've been mimicking that template for ages. We built root cellars to preserve food, carved cliffside homes, dug tunnels for travel, and mined for resources. Modern subways, bunkers, and storage spaces borrow the underground's resilience and insulation. The more we learn about how nature thrives below, the more an underground civilization feels like an extension of what's already here. Life doesn't need sunlight, it needs energy, stability, adaptation. Those exist in abundance beneath the surface. Maybe that's why myths of hidden realms persist, because in a sense they're already true. Realms beneath us full of life, adaptation, and mystery are vast, even if their kings and palaces happen to be microbes and fish rather than people. Once you accept that, the leap to human societies among them is smaller. The precedent is already set. The underground is alive, and perhaps, in ways we've forgotten, it has been home to us too. To imagine a civilization underneath our feet, not as a fleeting refuge, but as a lasting home. It helps to understand the science of the ecosystems that already exist there. These systems aren't like forests or prairies. They're slower, quieter, stranger, and yet they follow rules. Scientists are only beginning to map those rules. Look closely, and you see that subterranean ecosystems hold everything a society might need: energy, water, stability, and webs of life that function without the sun. First, energy. On the surface, photosynthesis reigns. Plants capture sunlight and pass that energy along food chains. Underground, there is no sun. Life leans on chemosynthesis instead. Microbes harvest energy from chemicals hydrogen sulfide, methane, iron, and other minerals, forming the base of food webs. In some caves, bacteria grow in mats that feed insects, which feed spiders, beetles, or fish in turn. These systems can appear delicate, but they endure for extraordinary stretches, fueled by steady, self-renewing chemical reactions. Hydrology is central. Water moves underground in complex ways and shapes ecosystems as it goes. Aquifers carry not only water, but nutrients, minerals, and microbes. Subterranean rivers carve passages, create lakes, and connect chambers that would otherwise be isolated. Some systems depend on slow drip from above, tiny deliveries of organic material from the surface. Others are sealed, surviving on resources produced within. Water is the bloodstream of the underground, circulating life where light cannot. Oxygen is another constraint. Caves and deep subsurface zones often run low. Life adapts. Many cave animals evolve slow metabolisms needing little energy. Microbes shift to anaerobic processes and get by without oxygen at all. In some places, methane becomes the main energy source, and entire microbial communities live on it. Flexibility is the lesson. Life bends to fit environments that would kill most surface species. Biologists group cave dwellers by how tightly they're tied to the dark. Troglodytes are visitors. They use caves for part of their lives but can't survive there permanently, like bats that roost by day but feed outside. Troglophiles can live both above and below, moving between worlds as conditions demand. Troglodytes are the specialists, the lifers of the dark blind fish, pale salamanders, insects with elongated antennae. Over time, isolation shapes them. Unnecessary traits fade, others sharpen. The results are so distinct that scientists sometimes call them living fossils' windows into how seclusion sculpts life. Stability is a hallmark of subterranean systems. Surface ecosystems swing with seasons, storms, and droughts. Underground, temperatures hover. Humidity holds steady. Change creeps. That steadiness allows for delicate balances to persist. Populations may be small, yet they endure across astonishing timescales. In the deep biosphere, microbes reproduce so slowly entire communities seem paused, tick-tocking on timescales we barely grasp. But stability has a price. Systems balanced so finely can be vulnerable. A shift in water chemistry, a contaminant from above, or a newly introduced creature can bring collapse. In that sense, underground life is resilient and fragile at once, tenacious across eons, sensitive to sudden shocks. Scientists often call these ecosystems analogs for alien worlds. Because they don't rely on sunlight, they resemble environments we might find on planets without bright stars or on icy moons with oceans beneath. Europa, Enceladus, Titan. If life exists there, it might look like the microbes and specialized animals we find in Earth's caves. Studying the underground here gives us clues about life elsewhere. All of this matters to our question because it shows every essential ingredient for survival is accounted for below. Energy without sunlight, food webs built from microbes upward, water cycling through hidden veins, oxygen optional, stability across long spans. If microbes and fish can make it work, humans with technology and cooperation might build on the same foundations. But the science also sets limits. Productivity underground is typically low. Energy is scarce. Food webs are thin. Populations stay small. That suggests an underground society would likely be modest in size, tightly regulated, and deeply dependent on careful resource management. Abundance would be rare. Balance would be the law. There's another lesson: cooperation. Microbes form symbioses sharing resources and duties. Animals fit into niches that avoid wasteful overlap. Underground ecosystems work because each piece aligns with the rest. A human society below would need to mirror that, organizing around strict cooperation rather than unchecked growth. Perhaps the most humbling lesson is scale. Life underground is invisible but immense. We walk across the surface every day, unaware that beneath us lie layers upon layers of living systems. The earth isn't solid stone. It's a living body, veins carrying water, tissues teeming with microbes, hollows sheltering creatures we rarely see. If we take subterranean science seriously, the question shifts. It's no longer whether life could exist below, it's how it might organize, drawing on rules nature has refined for billions of years. And that leads to us. If we were to live in such a world, what would our species actually need to endure there? What could we learn from microbes and blind salamanders, and how might those lessons become the blueprint for human survival in stone and shadow? To imagine a civilization under the earth, not just scraping by for a while, but truly living. We have to think about what people would actually need. Not the romantic glow of vast caverns and secret kingdoms, but the daily necessities that keep humans going. Because myths can paint hidden utopias, but real life runs on air, water, food, light, shelter, sanitation, and the social glue that holds a community together. If any one of those is missing, no legend can make the underground sustainable. Start with air. Above ground, we forget to be grateful for it. Below, it's fragile. Caves can trap carbon dioxide, fires chew up oxygen. Without circulation, the atmosphere goes bad fast. Any society underground would need dependable ventilation. Natural fissures can move air, but people would likely have to widen and shape them, cutting shafts to vent smoke and pull in fresh drafts. Ancient miners already built clever systems that use the natural rise of warm air to keep tunnels breathable. For a whole community, that knowledge would be essential. Next, water. Nothing lasts long without it. Fortunately, the underground is rich with it, aquifers stretching beneath continents, rivers carving through limestone, pools fed by steady drip. But not all water is safe. Minerals, sulfur, or microbes can taint it. People would need ways to filter sand, charcoal, certain stones, or simply boil. And because underground flow can be seasonal or fickle, storage would matter. Stone cisterns, sealed with clay, could hold reserves against lean spells. Food is tougher. On the surface, sunlight drives everything, fields for crops, pastures for animals. Underground, that chain breaks. So what then? Mushrooms offer one answer. They grow in darkness, thriving on compost or wood. Early dwellers might learn to cultivate them deliberately, spreading spores on prepared beds. Insects offer another. Crickets and beetles turn scraps into protein. While modern tastes flinch, many cultures already use them. Subterranean fish could be caught and, over time, managed channels and pools adapted for breeding. Small mammals might be domesticated with patience. And if total isolation proved impossible, occasional forays to the surface for seeds, fats, or particular plants could close the nutritional gaps. Myths of underground people sending messengers above might be practical memories in disguise. Light is necessary, but perhaps not in the way we think. Humans don't need constant brightness to live, but we do need light to work, cook, build, and feel oriented. Torches are short-term answers. Smoke becomes a problem. Oil lamps, if fuel could be rendered or extracted, would be more efficient. Natural options exist too. Bioluminescent fungi and insects can provide a faint, steady glow. Even if dim, multiplied across walls and ceilings, that glow could be enough to move, meet, and make. Picture caverns bathing in soft phosphorescence, never daylight, but livable. Shelter seems simple, caves already have roofs. But livable takes work. Floors would need leveling. Dampness would need to be managed. Fire would need careful control. Some rooms flood, others collapse. Choosing safe spaces matters. As numbers grow, tunnels must be widened, halls expanded, supports added. Ancient miners did all of this. It isn't hard to imagine an underground people shaping their world into homes, workshops, storerooms, and gathering places. Sanitation is easy to overlook and impossible to ignore. Waste will poison air and water if mishandled. Systems to remove or reuse it would be vital. Compost could turn scraps into fuel for mushrooms or insects. Latrines would sit where underground streams can carry waste away, or where pits can be managed safely. Without such systems, No community endures for long. Beyond physical needs, humans require something less tangible: community and meaning. We don't live on calories alone. We live on cooperation, rules, rituals, and stories. Underground, that need would be amplified. In a world of darkness and whispering stone, shared songs, myths, and ceremonies become the threads that bind. Circles around fire or glowing fungi might anchor social life. Stories of ancestors and heroes don't just explain the world, they make it bearable. Time would be another challenge. Without sunlight, our internal clocks drift. Cave experiments show sleep cycles stretching, shrinking, or floating free. An underground society would need to keep time: artificially water clocks, drum beats, scheduled meals, communal rituals. Submariners and polar researchers do this today. Without anchors, days lose shape. With them, life regains its rhythm. Psychology matters. Humans crave light, space, and variety. The monotony below could weigh heavy, but people adapt. Carved art, echoing music, festivals and glowing halls, these can color the dark. And over generations, what feels like deprivation to us might feel like normalcy to them. Children raised without a sky won't miss it. They'll find beauty in crystal veins, in rippled limestone, in the hush of water dripping from high arches. Safety from animals would factor in. Caves aren't empty. Snakes, bats, insects, even larger animals find niches. Fire discourages many. Noise and presence deter others. Over time, people would occupy deeper, more isolated chambers beyond big predators' ranges, claiming spaces that belonged only to them. Tools and materials would be shaped by what's at hand. Stone is plentiful. Bones work in a pinch. Wood could be carried down from above, rationed carefully. Underground, minerals are abundant. Iron, copper, and other ores could be mined and worked. That might even give underground people an edge over surface neighbors, still limited by what lay on top. So what do people need to live below? Air, water, food, light, shelter, sanitation, culture, time, safety, resources. None are impossible. Some are difficult. History shows humans can adapt to deserts, polar ice, high mountains. The underground would be another extreme, a balancing act more than a conquest. Perhaps that's why myths describe subterranean civilizations as disciplined, enlightened, advanced. To endure below, you would have to be. Chaos would break you. Balance would save you. So yes, it's possible. Cave science, human ingenuity, and life's resilience all suggest it could work. It wouldn't look like our sprawling, abundant surface world. It would be smaller, stricter, more careful. But it would be real, a society tuned to stone and silence, thriving without a sky. And once we accept survival, the next question grows larger. Not just what people need, but how they shape their spaces, how they turn rough rock into homes and their dark into meaning. Because survival is only the beginning. Civilization isn't just endurance, it's architecture, culture, imagination. When you picture building a lasting life underground, maybe the hardest puzzle is how people would secure food, water, and energy. Up here, those things feel abundant. Rain drops from the sky, rivers meander in the open, crops stretch to the horizon, animals fatten on grass. The sun shows up every morning, pouring out energy for free, the quiet engine behind everything we eat and do. Below, none of that is obvious. No sun, no open streams, no wheat fields shimmering in wind. And yet, look closer, and each necessity has an underground counterpart, trickier to manage, yes, but far from impossible. Start with food. For most of human history, nourishment is a sunlight story. Plants trap light, animals eat plants, and we eat both. Remove the sun, and that familiar ladder collapses. But other ladders exist below. Fungi thrive in darkness, digesting wood, compost, and waste. Mushrooms can be deliberately cultivated beds made of decaying plant matter, sticks, or prepared soil, feeding flush after flush. On the surface, many cultures have prized mushrooms for centuries. Underground, they become staple, something like bread in our diet. Insects offer another path. Crickets, beetles, mealworms, quick to grow, light on resources, heavy on protein. While some modern palates resist, many traditions already embrace them. In tight, dark spaces, insects make sense. Easy to breed, easy to feed, flexible enough to become ordinary. In an underground kitchen, a bowl of roasted crickets might feel as normal as a loaf of bread or a bowl of rice does to us. Fish live below too. Blind cave fish haunt underground rivers and lakes. People could capture and then manage them, reshaping pools and channels to breed and harvest. Over time, deliberate tending would create dependable yields. Fish bring not just protein but fat crucial in diets that otherwise lean on mushrooms and insects. Small mammals might be possible with patience. If rats or rabbits were introduced, generations of selective breeding could turn them into reliable livestock. Perhaps even goats or sheep were once coaxed below for milk and meat, if pathways and forage existed. We can't know. But people carry food systems wherever they go, bending landscapes to sustain them. Plants are the tricky part. Most need light. Some, however, can survive in low light, or with substitutes. If underground people learn to cultivate bioluminescent fungi or keep colonies of glowing insects, they might nurture a few hardy greens. More likely, they would supplement with trade, rare trips to the surface to gather seeds, grains, oils, and fruits. Many legends tell of hidden peoples who emerge only occasionally, trading or taking what's needed. Perhaps food was one reason for those cautious journeys. So food, though demanding, has answers. Not the abundance we know, but enough. Mushrooms, insects, fish, small animals, occasional plants, and careful planning. Water is, in many ways, less of a problem underground than we imagine. Aquifers spread beneath us like hidden seas. Caves commonly shelter rivers and lakes, slowly replenished by rain filtering from above. Drip water can be harvested. With sturdy storage, it can last through dry spells. The challenge is purity. Some underground water is mineral-heavy, even toxic. Sulfur springs, iron-rich pools, stagnant basins. These can make you sick. Filtration becomes essential. Sand and charcoal filters help. Certain stones can clarify water. Boiling is reliable if fuel is on hand. Over time, people would learn which sources are trustworthy, which must be treated, which to avoid. Moving that water matters too. Subterranean rivers are narrow, rough, and sometimes dangerous. Communities would need containers and channels, clay jars sealed against leaks, stone-lined conduits, leather or treated hide skins, cisterns carved into bedrock and lined with clay. It's no surprise that legends of underground cities often place them beside great lakes or rivers. Water decides settlement everywhere, above and below. Energy may be the most fascinating challenge. Up here, energy comes from sun, wind, open rivers. Underground, those sources fall away. So what then? Fire is the obvious answer. Wood hauled from above, or peat or coal dug below. Fire is risky in tight spaces, smoke and heat suffocate. But with well-designed ventilation and a disciplined culture, it can be managed. Fuels would be carefully chosen for clean burn. Fire becomes both warmth and light, and also a metronome for life, marking beginnings when flames flare, endings when embers dim. Beyond flame, subtler lights emerge. Bioluminescent fungi can cast a soft, steady glow. Certain insects glow as well. People could breed and tend colonies, housing them in containers or along walls to create a galaxy of small lights. Minerals and crystals can reflect and scatter the least, spark-polished and arranged to spread a single flame's reach through a wide chamber. It isn't daylight, but brightness means something different in darkness. A little goes a long way. Geothermal heat might join the toolkit. The Earth's warmth seeps up through cracks. Hot springs, warm rock, and steam vents could be harnessed for cooking, bathing, and heating. Stone channels and basins could guide steam to where it's needed. Simple, durable, effective. And then there's human power. Where energy is scarce, people become the engines. Teams lifting, turning, grinding. Rhythmic labor organized as precisely as ritual. In a world without the sun's bounty, cooperation isn't just social, it's mechanical. Many hands replace the missing star. Picture a communal hall washed in faint green-blue glow, the air comfortably warm from geothermal seep, meals of mushrooms, fish, and insects shared from clay bowls, cisterns full from an ever-dripping vein of stone. Above, unseen, sunlight arcs for other societies. Below, life goes on, self-sufficient, careful, enduring. None of this is easy. Food demands constant tending. Water systems need guarding. Energy is always finite. But humans are problem solvers. Myths portray underground peoples as disciplined and wise because they'd have to be. Wastefulness ruins a closed world. Patience, balance, and mutual duty keep it alive. Once food, water, and energy are steady, something else can grow. Culture. Full bellies and warm rooms give space for art, song, ritual, and story. From those foundations, quietly, inevitably, civilization rises. If people truly chose to live beneath the surface, not as a stopgap, but as a way of life, one of their first undertakings would be to reshape space. Natural caves give shelter, but they aren't comfortable by default. Floors buckle and tilt, ceilings drip, walls pinch at odd angles. A family could tolerate such conditions for a season. A civilization would need intent. So the story of an underground people would also be the story of architecture of turning stone and silence into places that feel like home. Stone is demanding, but it's faithful. It doesn't rot like wood or wash away like mud. To work in stone is to think long-term, to build for grandchildren you will never meet. Tools blunt, labor wears bodies down. But once a room is carved, it can last for generations. A single chamber could cradle births and funerals, its walls bearing the marks of those who lived and left. Early structures would have been small adjustments, smoothing a sleeping platform, stacking stones to cradle a hearth, cutting shallow channels so ceiling drip wouldn't flood a floor. Over time, improvements would become bold straightening passages, expanding rooms, carving niches for storage. Even the simple act of gathering would push architecture forward, encouraging wider chambers where dozens could sit together and hear one voice. Ventilation would shape design as much as comfort. Without care, smoke suffocates. Shafts would need to be cut and angled so warm, air carries fumes upward and away. Passages might be oriented to encourage drafts, drawing in fresh air while expelling stale. Ancient miners already knew these tricks. People don't need modern science to feel which way air wants to move. Sound would matter too. Underground, it behaves strangely. A whisper can carry farther than you expect, and bend around corners in ways that garble words. Thickened walls might shelter sleeping areas from echo. Communal halls could be carved where acoustics make chants, songs, and speeches bloom. Ritual might grow around such spaces, drums and voices set to resonate in stone, turning gatherings into shared ceremony. Light would be precious, and rooms would adapt to it. Near entrances, where a hint of daylight reaches, people might work and weave. Deeper chambers lit only by flame or faint bioluminescence would become storerooms, sleeping areas, or sanctuaries. Lamps would sit in carved niches. Soot-darkened ceilings would cut glare and catch smoke. Over time, people would learn to place light with care, balancing brightness and shadow to make darkness manageable rather than oppressive. As communities grew, organization would emerge. Family rooms might branch from a central hall like roots from a trunk. Shared resources, cisterns, storerooms, meeting spaces would anchor neighborhoods. Paths would widen for traffic. Walls would be marked to guide the way. To outsiders, such places might feel like labyrinths. To those who lived there, they'd be maps of memory, every turn familiar, every corner named in story. Safety from collapse would be non-negotiable. Unbraced ceilings fall, so pillars would be left standing ribs of natural stone holding up the weight. Some societies might even carve pillars deliberately, shaping them into animals, ancestors, or protective figures, necessity transformed into art. In that way, underground architecture would fuse function with meaning. Water management would run through everything. Rooms prone to flooding could be abandoned or converted into cisterns. Floors would be cut with channels, guiding drip towards storage. Stalactites and stalagmites might be incorporated, their steady seep turned from nuisance to feature. To live in caves is to live with water. Buildings would accept and direct it rather than fight it. Temperature would guide design as well. Stone changes slowly. Deep rooms stay cool, even in summer. Fires would warm central spaces, while simple insulation-plastered walls, woven mats, animal skins stretched over openings would hold heat. In places where geothermal warmth rises, floors themselves might become radiant, used as natural hearths. Over time, symbolism would grow. Just as surface cathedrals reach upward, underground halls might spiral inward or descend in tiers. gestures of connection to Earth's heart. Domes, vaults, and long galleries could serve spiritual and social needs. Walls would fill with art, pigments ground from minerals, incised lines telling of ancestors, hunts, harvests, and myths. Each mark would soften raw stone into something human. Storage would drive much of the unseen architecture. Mushrooms, dried fish, preserved meat, tools, seeds, all would need protection from damp and pests. Sealed alcoves high on walls, pits lined with clay, shelves carved into dry, stable corners. These quiet rooms would make survival possible. Grand halls may get remembered, but it's the hidden closets that keep a people alive. Communication would become a design principle. Long tunnels disorient. Without cues, even locals can lose their way. So the walls would speak, grooves and textures for safe routes, crosshatches for hazards, spirals pointing toward communal centers, handprints marking family areas. More than decoration, these are maps and messages, an architectural language taught to every child. And there's the matter of quiet. Above ground, the world hums wind in trees, birds, rivers. Below, silence reigns. Every sound acquires weight. Builders would shape spaces not only for use, but for sound-softening walls where privacy matters, brightening corners where voices should carry. Silence itself becomes a material, something to be held, damped, or amplified. Across generations, these carved places would become cities in stone. Not cities like ours with towers and avenues, but interlaced rooms and corridors, purposeful yet organic. To walk through them would be to walk through the memory of a people, each wall recording labor, belief, and adaptation. Once people choose to stay underground, architecture isn't optional. Caves must be shaped, extended, maintained. In that shaping, culture takes form. A home isn't only stone. It's a rhythm of life set into stone. When air is moving, water stored, food protected, and halls echo with voices, another question arrives. How would these people connect with one another? Architecture provides the stage. Communication gives it life. In a world without stars, communication itself would change, sculpted by closeness, by stone, and by endless night. When we imagine people living below, we picture meals, tools, and rooms. But another question runs under all of that. How would they communicate in a world without a sky? Communication isn't just about words. It's about orientation, memory, cooperation, identity. On the surface, we share reference points. Sunrise for morning, constellations for navigation, seasons for time. Birds, rivers, and wind carry cues that shape how we speak and think. Underground, those vanish. How do you weave connection when the sky is gone? Start with sound. In the dark, vision shrinks. Light is scarce, so sound becomes central. The echo of steps tells you how wide a tunnel is, whether a chamber opens ahead, whether someone is coming toward you. Voices travel far, but they bend around corners, altering meaning. People would have to shape their speech slower, clearer, with pauses long enough for echoes to fade before the next sentence. Dialects might form around stone's acoustics. To surface ears, underground speech might sound oddly paced. Down there, it would feel perfectly natural. Beyond talk, sound becomes signal. A struck stone, a hollow drum, a clap each can carry down halls. Rhythms can code meaning. Danger, welcome, gathering, ritual. Many surface cultures already use drums for distance messages. Caves would magnify that power. An underground community might develop a rich acoustic language, coordinating across darkness with beats and echoes. Whistles would find a place too. High tones travel differently through tight passages, sometimes farther than voice. Shepherds on the surface already use whistle languages to share complex messages across valleys. Below, a few notes might identify a person, mark a water source, or signal a safe route. Touch would become a language. When vision falters, hands lead. Walls could be carved with textures, smooth for safe ways, rough for hazards, spirals for meeting halls. Travelers would read these with fingertips as easily as we read street signs. Families might mark spaces with unique patterns, a sequence of lines or dots claiming a corner as theirs. And beyond walls, touch would carry into social life. Handshakes, embraces, a brush of fingers, fast ways to communicate in dim light where faces are hard to see. Symbols would spread. carved into stone, painted with mineral pigments, stacked in small cairns. They would mark direction, boundaries, resources, and stories. Prehistoric caves already hold handprints and animals, as well as abstract marks whose meanings we've lost. Those were messages, identity, faith, instruction meant to last. An underground civilization would likely expand this habit until every chamber told its own tale. Light itself can be a signal. A torch waved in a pattern, a lamp shaded and unshaded, a circle of glowing fungus each could speak. In darkness, the smallest light stands out. Entire systems might evolve, like lantern codes at sea-brief bursts spelling warnings or welcomes across a wide room. Storytelling would be essential. Without stars to count seasons, without horizon to orient, stories would become memory scaffolding. Through tales, people would remember where water runs, what tunnels collapsed, how ancestors coped with famine. These wouldn't be mere entertainment. They'd be maps and manuals wrapped as myth, passed down because they're easy to remember and a joy to repeat. Song multiplies that power. Music carries emotion and information. A travel song can encode directions. A work chant keeps rhythm and coordinates effort. A lullaby teaches values so gently that children learn them before they understand the words. Underground songs would bloom in chambers echo, turning a few voices into many, fusing memory with unity. Time would need communicating. Without sun or stars, time loses its natural markers, so it becomes social. People would agree on intervals for meals, rituals, work, and rest. Bells, drums, or signal stones could mark those divisions. Time becomes something the community makes and maintains together. Writing, if it develops, would look different. Stone and clay would be the medium's walls engraved where words should endure, tablets baked near hearths for records. Symbols might map space as much as language architecture becoming a kind of text. In such a world, a wall could be a book, a corridor, a sentence, a pattern of grooves, a law. The lack of sky changes imagination. The surface gives us metaphors of stars and flight. Underground, communication would draw from stone, water, silence. Ancestors might be remembered as streams, gods imagined as glowing crystals. Metaphors would be tactile and sonic rather than celestial. Destiny might be a branching tunnel, not a guiding star. Conflict and diplomacy would depend on communication as well. In close quarters, misunderstandings can be dangerous. Rituals for mediation might evolve, structured speech with planned silences to prevent echoes from whipping arguments into chaos. In such a culture, pauses would be respected as part of talking. Silence would be a tool, not an absence. Identity itself might become audible. In darkness, we rely less on faces. Names could be tied to sound voices, rhythms, songs. A person might be known by the pattern they tap on stone, or the way they whistle a greeting. Families might pass down signature rhythms recognizable even in complete dark. Imagine leadership in this setting. Meetings held in echoing halls where speakers don't rush but pace themselves, letting each thought settle into silence before the next begins. Listeners close their eyes to hear more fully. Decisions aren't made by the loudest voice, but through measured exchanges where silence counts as much as sound. That isn't fantasy. It's adaptation communication, molded by stone. Contact with the surface would complicate everything. How do you signal those above without revealing yourself? Maybe through hidden shafts that carry sound, maybe through symbols carved on stones left at agreed places. Secrecy would matter. Communication would have to balance openness with protection. Memory across generations would be scaffolded by ritual. Oral tradition is strong, but inscriptions anchor it. Carved marks repeated in many places, songs rehearsed by entire groups. These ensure continuity. In a world without stars to whisper of eternity, permanence must be carved and sung. So communication below would be more than words. It would be sound, touch, light, symbol, story, and ritual, a whole web of signals that lets people share space and meaning. Take away the sky, and humanity doesn't fall silent. If anything, every other form of connection grows richer. And once people can be heard and remembered in darkness, another challenge arrives. What does endless night do to the mind itself? Architecture and communication meet physical and social needs. Psychology is another matter. What happens when generations grow up never seeing the sky? To survive underground isn't only about locating water veins, managing air, or carving rooms. The greater test may be the mind. Humans evolved beneath an open sky guided by cycles of light and dark, warmed by sun, cooled by night. Our instincts and body clocks are tuned to that rhythm. Take the sky away, and the mental landscape begins to shift. The psychology of endless night might be the deciding factor in whether a subterranean civilization could endure for generations. We already have clues from surface experiments. Put people in caves without sunlight, and their sense of time drifts. Some stretch to 25 or 26-hour days. Others slip free of any pattern at all, sleeping when they feel like it, waking when they feel ready, until their schedules no longer match anything familiar. Weeks blur. Without sunrise, the body loses its anchor. Underground, people would have to invent new anchors, artificial rhythms to hold them together. Light does more than show us the world. It regulates hormones, moods, and sleep. Without it, lethargy and depression can creep in. Energy, motivation, and joy can ebb. For an underground people, this could be a constant battle. How to keep spirits alive without dawn. Part of the answer is practical. Torches, lamps, glowing fungi, polished stone to scatter light. Part of it is cultural music, ritual, art, and shared stories can act like emotional sunlight, filling the void left by the missing sky. Silence is another weight. Above ground, life hums wind, birds, rivers, insects. Underground, quiet rules. Silence can soothe, but it can also press down. Left too long, it can feel heavy. People would need to give sound meaning, songs sung in groups, chants that align breathing and heartbeat, instruments carved of bone or stone. Music would not be an extra. It would be medicine. It would remind everyone they're not alone. Space shapes the mind too. Horizons ease us. Distance reassures. Underground walls are close, ceilings low, the world bounded. Some would find that snug and safe, like being held. Others would feel caged. Over generations, people might adapt. Children raised below might find open landscapes overwhelming instead of calming. Even so, the absence of a horizon would mold imagination. When sight contracts, mind expands dreams of vast halls, gods of infinite chambers, legends of hidden skies under rock. Fear shifts in the dark. On the surface, danger often announces itself from far away. Below, it can be around the bend. Tunnels collapse. Predators lie in shadow. Another group might appear without warning. That uncertainty breeds vigilance, and vigilance, if constant, becomes anxiety. To manage it, communities would need trust, shared rituals, mutual reliance, clear protocols for danger. Order calms the mind when the world feels unpredictable. Isolation would be an ever-present threat. A collapse can cut off families for days. Being trapped with only your thoughts in quiet halls is hard. So signals and routines become vital, scheduled roll calls, sound relays down main passages, rituals of gathering that confirm no one is missing. Psychology thrives on connection. People need to know others will come if trouble hits. Dreams themselves might change. Without sunrise, sleep starts and ends aren't nudged by light. Dreams might become longer, stranger filled with stone, water, echo. Myths could spring from those dreams, cosmologies born of the mind trying to make sense of unending night. Gods may not live in the sky, but in rock. The underworld wouldn't be metaphor. It would be home. Mental illness would be a genuine danger, depression, anxiety, disorientation. But culture is protection. Art, ritual, shared structure. These are psychological tools. Underground societies might create elaborate ceremonies around light and sound to keep emotional balance, fire festivals mimicking sunrise, communal chants that regulate group rhythm, storytelling circles that give hope and direction when days blur. And there is resilience. Humans adapt. What burdens one generation can be baseline for the next. Children who have never seen sun won't miss it. Their world will be stone, water, and fire. Their minds will shape to that reality. Imagination fills gaps, dreaming of crystal heavens, glowing rivers, gods of night. Their psychology won't break in the absence. It will be remade by it. yet longing for the surface might persist. Some would dream of a light they've never seen. Ancestral memories told through myths could keep that ache alive. Psychology isn't only shaped by rock and water, it's shaped by story. Tales of a brighter world would pull at minds, some hearing myth, others hearing destiny. Discipline would likely run deep. Where survival depends on cooperation, rules tighten. Underground, the mind bends toward collective needs. Rituals of respect, order, and patience would become central, not because people are less human, but because chaos is costly. The environment punishes disorder swiftly. Creativity wouldn't die in darkness, it might flourish. Starved of sky, people would turn inward, finding universes in dreams, in walls turned to canvases, in music tuned to echo. Our oldest cave art proves it. In deep night, humans painted animals in hands and signs, crafting meaning where none existed. An underground civilization would do the same. Not luxury, but necessity. Art stabilizes. It gives the mind a mirror. Hope matters too. Minds need it as much as food or water. Underground, hope might take the form of prophecies about returning to the surface or stories of hidden skies deeper down. Whether fulfilled or not, such stories fight despair. They give direction, a reason to rise tomorrow and do the work again. So the psychology of endless night isn't simple. It holds fear and heaviness, but also adaptation, imagination, and grit. It's a delicate world, fragile, but full of potential. As surely as people reshape rock, the mind reshapes itself to survive. And when minds adapt and communities develop rituals and culture to sustain them, another question emerges. How do you organize those minds? Psychology looks at individuals. Civilization relies on groups. In the long night, groups would have to settle on rules for sharing, leading, and living together without tearing themselves apart. When people gather in large numbers, rules appear. Sometimes they're spoken, sometimes they're simply understood, but they're always there. A single family can get by without them. A civilization can't. Life underground would hinge not just on air, water, food, and light, but on agreements. How to share, how to lead, how to prevent small mistakes from becoming disasters. The rock itself would enforce certain laws. Space is limited, resources are delicate, errors are costly. Beyond those natural pressures, a people below would have to decide how to live together. At first, necessity would govern. Small groups often lean on consensus or the strongest personality, but underground the margin for error is thin. One hoarded cache, one wasted cistern, one careless fire could endanger everyone. Leadership would be more than authority, it would be stewardship. Those chosen to guide might be selected for steadiness, wisdom, patience, fairness. The people who think slowly, weigh consequences, and keep balance would rise. Elders would likely hold central roles. In darkness, memory is survival. The older generation recalls which tunnels collapsed, which water turned foul, which rituals kept the community calm. Their authority wouldn't just be respected, it would be essential. A council of elders might preside, each voice weighted by years. Decisions would come slowly, pauses would stretch. In a quiet world, deliberation becomes a virtue, and patience becomes law. Division of labor would take shape quickly. Underground life doesn't allow everyone to do everything. Some would tend water checking cisterns, clearing channels. Others would cultivate mushrooms, manage insects, or fish secret streams. Builders would carve new rooms and shore up old ones. Watchers would scan for predators, intruders, or signs of stress in the rock. Storytellers, singers, and spiritual leaders would guard morale. Specialization would be no luxury. It would be the stitching that holds the fabric together. Rules around resources would be strict. On the surface, plenty permits waste. Below, every scrap matters. Food would be rationed. Water distributed by need. Fuel conserved. Penalties for breaking these rules might be severe, not out of cruelty, but necessity. Stealing food underground isn't just theft, it's endangerment. Such a society might develop codes of fairness so embedded that they feel sacred. Sharing becomes more than kindness. it becomes survival. Conflict would still happen. Humans compete, envy, and clash, even in tight quarters. But below, conflict can't be allowed to fester. Walls are close, voices carry, lives interlock. Systems for resolution would have to be formal rituals of mediation, circles for listening, judgments rendered by councils. Exile might be the harshest punishment of fate, worse than death in deeper dark. Belief would intertwine with organization. Leaders might guide not only policy but spirit, reinforcing shared rules with myth and ceremony. Rites around fire, water, and glowing fungi could remind people of mutual dependence. Moral codes would be framed as sacred obligations, not mere regulations. In this way, practical survival would be handed down as tradition lasting, because it felt holy. If multiple communities existed below, they'd have to negotiate distance and trust. Tunnels could connect halls, rivers might link clusters, alliances could form trading food, tools, and songs. Still, secrecy preserves safety. The balance between openness and isolation would shape politics. Ritual greetings might evolve. Slow passwords of rhythm and phrase, gifts exchanged to show goodwill. Population itself would need managing. In closed systems, growth without limits breaks the balance. Customs would likely arise to regulate family size, delayed marriage, shared child rearing, religious constraints. Life below demands equilibrium, not only in resources, but in numbers. Knowledge would be organized too. Who remembers the safe route? Who can brace a ceiling? Which fungus heals and which kills? Such knowledge can't be hoarded. It must be taught. Education would be communal, children learning in groups with elders, practical lessons woven into story. Information becomes a public trust, another form of resource. Architecture would reflect order. Central halls for councils, smaller rooms for families, guarded storehouses, mapped thoroughfares, marked thresholds. Space underground isn't infinite. Every chamber must serve a purpose. Organization is literally carved into the walls. Imagination would legitimize authority. Myths might trace leadership to ancestors chosen by the earth itself. Rituals of succession could involve journeys through difficult tunnels, trials of patience, demonstrations of balance and restraint. Underground, governance wouldn't be only practical. It would be theatrical, reaffirming order through ceremony. Gender roles might shift. On the surface, they often formed around fields, hunting, and war. Below, status could hinge on skills navigation, conflict resolution, resource preservation, regardless of gender. Work that keeps the system alive would be honored above tradition. Who can carve? Who can heal? Who can calm? Those questions would define prestige. Defense would shape politics as well. If discovery by surface groups posed a threat, secrecy would become law. Children would be taught never to reveal entrances. Tunnels would be concealed. Guards would patrol boundaries quietly, snuffing lights at any sign of intrusion. The politics of survival would be the politics of concealment. And amid all the discipline, there would be celebration. Festivals, songs, and rites give life flavor beyond survival. People might gather to honor water, celebrate births, mark harvests of fungi or fish. In those moments, rigid order softens into joy, reminding everyone why they endure. Celebration itself is governance. It reinforces unity through a shared heartbeat. So how might civilization organize underground? With necessity and creativity. With strict rules and shared rituals. Elders guiding by memory. Councils deciding slowly. Labor divided by skill. Resources rationed fairly. Conflict resolved in ceremony. Belief binding it together. Secrecy guarding the edges. And celebration giving it breath. What takes shape isn't a ragged cluster of survivors, but a disciplined, resilient people. Their rules may feel harsh to us. To them, they would be natural, the shape of life carved into stone. Once an inner order is set, a new question arrives. What about the world above? Would these people see the surface as paradise, peril, legend, or temptation? Organization deals with order inside. Every order must also define what lies outside. Technology doesn't just mean machines or electricity. It's every way a people bends an environment to fit life, tools, and systems, clever bridges from weakness to strength. Above ground, technology grew hand in hand with the sun, the wind, the field, the open river. Underground, it would evolve in their absence. Technology born in darkness wouldn't tower or glint. It would be carved, channeled, hushed-shaped by stone and scarcity, designed to stretch every resource to its limit. Fire is the obvious beginning. Without sunlight, fire becomes both light and life. The first underground groups to master it would remake their world-warming rooms, cooking food, scaring off predators, hardening clay, and doing something subtler too, setting rhythm. Fire marks time. A flame's lighting signals a beginning. Embers mark an end. Underground fire acts like a clock and a symbol and a quiet power in its own right. But fire is dangerous below. Smoke suffocates, heat builds, oxygen wanes. So the technology of fire isn't only striking a spark, it's handling it. Ventilation shafts cut with care. Chambers shaped to pull smoke upward. Fuels chosen for clean burn. Families might pass down songs and stories to teach safe tending lore about disasters averted and mistakes never to repeat. In darkness, the sophistication of fire is measured not in brightness but in control. Light beyond flame would take inventive forms. Glowing fungi exist even on the surface, faint but faithful. In caves, they could be cultivated spread on damp walls to create a ghostly sheen. Certain insects produce light. People might house them in carefully crafted containers, feed and breed them, turning them into living lanterns. Minerals can reflect and scatter even the smallest spark. Polished crystals could diffuse a single flame into a room-wide glow. None of it rivals noon, but underground, light is relative. A little is abundance. Tools would follow. Stone is everywhere below, hard to shape at first, but enduring. Over time, chisels, hammers, and wedges would refine from rough to precise. Sharp blades for digging, flat heads for smoothing, delicate points for etching. Bone would fill gaps where stone falls short, flexible, light, good for needles and hooks. The discovery of metal would be revolutionary. Even small seams of copper or iron would change everything. Stronger tools, better supports, safer ceilings. Mining is already an underground craft. It makes sense that metallurgy might find some of its earliest refinements below. Transport would adapt to tight corridors. Carts and wagons make no sense in narrow tunnels. Loads would travel on backs and baskets woven from roots or fibers carried down from above. Sledges might glide over smoothed stone. Ropes braided from hair, plant fiber, or animal sinew would haul heavy weights. In vertical shafts, pulleys and counterweights would appear, simple at first, then elegant. Picture a chamber strung with ropes, weights balanced, goods moving between levels with quiet precision powered by muscle and knowledge. Storage would become a quiet triumph. Dampness and rot are constant enemies. Sealed niches carved high into walls, pits lined with clay, channels guiding airflow. These would keep supplies dry. Mushrooms dried on racks near warm vents, fish smoked slow and cool, grains sealed in clay jars. Preservation would be as important as production. Perhaps fermentation would arrive early foods transformed by microbes to last longer and taste deeper. Fermentation brings alcohol as well useful in medicine, ritual, and solace through long winters of stone. Communication tech would evolve in tuned harmony with rock. Sound travels far but distorts. People might carve resonant stones, phones of a sort that ring with pure tones when struck. Drums placed at intervals could relay signals hall to hall. Walls etched with direction marks would serve as maps. Torches waved in coded patterns could speak across a cavern. These aren't gadgets as we know them. They're systems refined through generations, each a bridge across darkness. Medicine would grow from close observation. Fungi heal and harm. Minerals soothe and poison. An underground pharmacopoeia would form. Poultices from mosses, infusions from roots carried down, powders from mineral scrapes dissolved in water. Healers would be revered readers of the silent language of stone and spore. Energy beyond fire would be tapped. Underground rivers can drive wheels. Even crude watermills could grind grain, lift buckets, move air. Geothermal heat can be captured. Steam channeled through carved conduits to cook, sterilize, and warm. These aren't turbines and engines, but stone basins, vents, and channels arranged with patience to nudge heat and water where they're needed. Clothing would show quiet ingenuity. Animal skins from the surface can only go so far. Mycelium, the root-like body of fungi, can form leathery sheets. Fibers from roots, bark, or traded surface plants could be woven with underground materials. Insect silk might be cultivated threads as strong as spider strands. In a world where durability matters more than decoration, clothing would be functional first, then turned into symbols by pattern and dye. Art is technology too. Pigments ground from mineral veins, mixed with fats or water, made into paints that endure. Flutes from bone, drums tuned by chamber echo, stringed instruments strung with gut or fiber, each is an engineered object born of need and imagination. Underground people wouldn't abandon beauty. They distill it, making meaning from limited means. We shouldn't underestimate human creativity under pressure. Our ancestors produced bows, boats, and homes with little more than stone, wood, and fiber. Underground, the problems change. The answers would be no less inventive. Darkness doesn't kill technology. It redirects it. Given enough time, technology below might surpass ours in certain ways. We lean on abundance, fields drenched in sun, global trade, vast grids. They would lean on precision, total recycling, meticulous care, no waste. In scarcity, their methods might look wiser than our extravagance. Technology born from darkness wouldn't dazzle in the sunlight. It would whisper through rock, shimmer in fungi, echo in coded beats. Humble, invisible, profound. Because technology isn't about how bright or loud it is. It's about how perfectly it serves its people. And once such tools exist, fire mastered, storage secure, signal steady, another question rises. Would a civilization content itself in darkness forever? Or would its tools one day point upward toward a surface its children have never seen? If a civilization were born in darkness raised among stone walls and quiet rivers, sooner or later a question would surface, even if only as a whisper. Would they ever look up again? Would they be content to carve their days in silence, or would curiosity, memory, and longing push them toward the world above? For those who'd never seen the sun, it wouldn't be a matter of returning. It would be a matter of imagining. The surface might be more myth than map too bright, too wide, too dangerous to feel real. At first, survival would drown that question out. The earliest generations would grind through essentials, carving rooms, securing food, taming fire and water, shaping rules and rituals. But stability breeds imagination. As children arrived who knew only stone, songs would gather around the rumor of a sky. Stories might tell of hidden light, a god of fire that rises and falls, a place where water falls from above instead of dripping from ceilings. Those tales would keep alive the faint idea that something exists beyond the rock. Elders, if any remembered the surface, would tell what they could. Memory bends with time. A practical list, trees, rivers, fields, would drift toward dream. Trees become pillars holding up the heavens. Rivers become endless serpents of water. The sun transforms from a burning star into a face you must not meet. Children raised on such stories might not take them literally, but the possibility would spark. A seed would be planted. Exploration would follow. Humans are pulled by boundaries. Even underground, some would nose into side passages and uncharted cracks, partly for food and water, partly because they can't help it. Some wouldn't return lost to collapses, predators, or missteps. Others would come back with news, a chamber they'd never seen, a new stream, a shaft where air moved in a way that suggested open space above. Now and then, a tunnel might angle upward, blocked, faint, but undeniable. Up would stop being only myth. It would become a direction again. Up would also become aspiration. Myths would iron themselves into laddered journeys, heroes climbing chamber by chamber, facing ordeals until they reach a realm of light, only to be remade by it. Initiation rites might echo that path, young people ascending through higher rooms until they step into a hall blazing with fire, a crafted sunrise meant to teach and test. With each ascent, up would mean something more. Hope. If ancestors had fled downward to escape disaster storm, famine, enemies, the echo of those dangers would carry for centuries. Stories would paint the surface as chaos. Exposure that kills, predators that stalk, enemies that hunt, weather that punishes. The below ground would be safety, order, sacred ground. In such a culture, up might even be taboo. Curiosity would be cast as betrayal. The ceiling would be more than stone. it would be law, but repression rarely erases desire. Forbidden ideas cluster in shadows. A child asks, "What's above?" A singer threads a song with light. A dreamer claims to have seen a sun in sleep. These are small acts. They don't vanish. They travel quietly at first, carried by memory, until survival feels sturdy enough to tolerate risk. Technology would turn whispers into plans. With stronger tools to cut and brace, with better ways to carry air and water, exploration could shift from accidental to intentional. A shaft blocked by rubble becomes a project. A faint draft becomes a clue. An upward expedition becomes a communal undertaking rather than a dare. The pull of the unknown is powerful. Our history says so. Crossed deserts, sailed oceans, reached into space. Often not because we had to, but because we wanted to know. For underground people, the surface would be their cosmos, an unreachable frontier that dares them. Imagine what happens if they succeed. If someone raised in darkness stands at a cave mouth at dawn, the flood of light would hurt, eyes squeeze shut, skin recoils. Slowly, they adjust, and what they see defies every underground story. A horizon without walls, a scatter of stars that goes on forever. The warmth of a sun you can feel. It might terrify. It might unmake them. It would also be revelation. Revelation rearranges everything. Stories fixed for generations would be confirmed, corrected, or shattered. Elders' authority might wobble. Belief could split, some declaring the surface sacred, others declaring it forbidden. Communities could fracture between those who want to climb and those who vow to remain. That tension would ripple into every corridor. Discovery doesn't have to mean abandonment. An underground civilization might treat the surface as another realm visited for ritual, trade, or vision quests. Youth could be sent upward as a test, returning with tales of sky and star that are folded back into culture. The surface could be woven into the fabric of life below without replacing it. Even so, once a door opens, it never fully closes. Knowledge gnaws. Why live without sunlight when it's just there? Why scrape in curiosity and fear, memory and myth, hope and caution? Their story wouldn't be a single path, but a braid of many. Look at us for a mirror. We live under stars and still dream of leaving them behind for space. Some call it destiny. Others, folly. We argue, yet rockets launch. Risks are taken. Maybe the urge to go up is universal. Maybe every people under sky or under stone carries the same spark. And if we imagine them climbing toward the surface, we also imagine what might come next. Because once a first step is taken, others follow. Not just up to the open air, but beyond. What happens when a people raised in darkness meets a world that dwarfs their myths? What happens when they realize their story might be only one chapter in a much older book? When we picture an underground civilization, we often cast it in the present, hidden now, or poised to emerge someday. But another question unsettles the ground beneath our feet. What if they were older than us? What if they were here first? That thought reshapes the story we tell about ourselves. We like to believe humanity is the opening act and the headliner, a species that began its rise in open air and bright light. But maybe another tale began in silence long before ours, etched into stone, refined in shadow, perfected over spans we can barely imagine. Our science says civilizations arise with agriculture, that fields under sun birthed cities, writing, trade. But must that be the only path? Mushrooms can be cultivated in darkness. Insects and fish can be raised in underground streams. Minerals can be shaped into tools. A people living in caves, organized and inventive, could have built something we would recognize as civilization long before anyone planted wheat. If they existed, their traces would be hard to find. Stone preserves little of ordinary life. Wood rots, cloth fades, fire leaves ash and stain. But even those fingerprints can blur into natural soot and mineral marks. Carved walls can resemble erosion unless you know how to read the line of a tool. And if their homes lay far below, in chambers we haven't reached, their world could remain untouched for tens of thousands of years. Legends might hold the faintest echoes, tales of hidden realms, forgotten peoples, wise ancestors who taught skills we later claimed as our own. Stories of Shambhala, Agartha, hollow places and hollow ways. These might be less like maps and more like memories smeared across time. Around the world, cultures tell of emerging from below, ancestors climbing from caves into a new sky. Perhaps those aren't pure invention. Perhaps they are fragments of encounters with something older. If they came before us, why did they vanish? Maybe they didn't. Maybe they remained where they were, content with the stability of their world while we rose to fill the open air. Or maybe disaster struck below flooded tunnels, poisoned air, long collapses forcing survivors upward into a landscape they barely knew. Those who made it might have mingled with early humans, passing along fragments of knowledge fire-making refined, craft improved, before their identity dissolved into ours. Imagine if some of what we call innovation is inheritance, quiet gifts from people of the dark. It wouldn't be the first time progress traveled through unseen hands. Much of human achievement is shared, borrowed, traded, reinvented. If another intelligence lived here first, their fingerprints might already be printed in our culture unnoticed because we assume they're our own. Psychologically, the idea is a mirror we might not like. We're used to being first and best. If someone preceded us, then we're not pioneers but successors. Not alone on the stage, but part of a chain, perhaps only one link in a long sequence of rises and falls. It pushes us to ask whether our time at the top is permanent or passing, whether another intelligence might someday follow us as we followed them. Fiction plays with this constantly ancient cities buried in planets, ruins holding secrets older than humanity, knowledge sleeping in forgotten tunnels. But this isn't only story. Archaeology keeps humbling certainty. Cities under deserts, civilizations erased by climate, cultures thriving and vanishing long before we thought possible. If this happens atop the Earth, why not below it? Their technology wouldn't look like ours. It would be tuned to darkness, honed by scarcity ventilation and water systems perfect enough to last centuries, fungal cultivation and stonecraft pushed to quiet genius. What we call simple, they might have perfected until it became art. Survival in such a world demands discipline, balance, restraint. If they managed that balance, they might have endured far longer than our brief 10,000 years of recorded history. Did they ever meet us? Perhaps early humans stumbled into their tunnels and mistook them for spirits or gods. Maybe stories of dwarves, trolls, and small folk in mountains are stretched recollections of real encounters, exaggeration adding teeth and magic, but at the core, a memory of people who had adapted to the dark. The absence of clear evidence doesn't end the possibility. Most of human time leaves no mark. Most of Earth's time hides more than it shows. Stone swallows. Water washes. Time erases more than it preserves. Lack of proof is not proof of lack. And if they were here before us, another question stirs. What if they're still here? Not gone just quiet, hidden deep in places we can't reach. We like to say we've mapped the world, but much remains unseen. The ocean is a continent of mysteries. The crust is largely unknown. Cave systems stretch for miles waiting. It isn't impossible that intelligent life continues in silence where we do not look. If that were true, what then? How would they see us? Noisy, wasteful, reckless with resources they learned to guard. Would they pity, envy, fear, or ignore us? Would they reveal themselves or keep watching from the edges? And how would we see ourselves knowing we weren't the first? Religions would be tested, science humbled, culture rewritten. The knowledge that someone else shaped this world first would change our reflection in the mirror. Maybe it would make us gentler, more cautious, or maybe it would drive us to compete, to prove ourselves worthy inheritors. The truth may never lift its veil. We may never find traces strong enough to prove they were here. Stone may hold its secrets, and that's all right. The question still matters. It reminds us, history isn't a straight road. It's a web of possibilities. Some bright, some buried. The story of Earth is older and stranger than the short chapter we've written on its surface. Letting that question linger leads to another. If they left traces, where might we find them? If they still exist, what signs would betray their presence? If memory sleeps in the underground, what evidence waits in the cracks and shadows? If we allow ourselves to wonder whether another civilization once lived beneath our feet, or even lingers there still, The next question comes naturally. What signs would remain? What clues might be hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to notice? Stone is slow to speak. It hoards its secrets. But nothing lives without leaving traces. Every fire leaves ash. Every tool leaves a line. Every life, if you listen closely enough, leaves an echo. Caves are the first and most obvious places to look. When our own ancestors painted walls, carved symbols, and left tools deep inside, they preserved glimpses of their lives for tens of thousands of years. If another people lived further down or far earlier, they might have done the same. Lines that pass for cracks might, upon close inspection, prove to be tool marks. A chamber that seems perfectly natural might reveal, under careful light, a smoothing hand, a pattern that doesn't follow water's logic. Archaeologists already debate these questions at times. Is this surface formed by mineral flow or by human labor? Is that wall an accident or intention? Some arguments might be, without anyone realizing, about traces left by someone else in a deeper past. Artifacts provide another thread, though a faint one. Stone tools can survive, but they're easy to overlook. A chisel or wedge buried under silt can look like an odd rock to anyone not primed to see its shape. More delicate materials, wood, fiber, bone decay quickly, and metal often corrodes into unrecognizable stains, so we shouldn't imagine troves of shining objects. We should expect subtlety, soot stains in the right patterns, repeated piles of stones where chance would be unlikely, arrangements of pebbles or shards that suggest meaning over randomness. Our stories themselves are a kind of evidence. Across cultures, people tell of ancestors emerging from the ground, or of hidden folk who taught medicine, planting, or metalwork and then vanished below again. We label these myths because we can't test them. Yet myths often preserve echoes of real events. When distant cultures share similar shapes of story, the pattern hints at something more than coincidence. Perhaps these are cultural memories blurred by time of encounters with people who lived where sunlight never reached. Geology offers its own oddities. There are tunnel systems that stretch for miles, with levels and chambers that look uncannily irregular. Science explains most of them: water dissolving rock, lava tubes cooling into long tubes, erosion carving passageways. Still, the symmetry can be startling. A shaft too straight, a corridor too uniformly wide, a branching pattern that mirrors design more than chaos. If people once shaped these places, time and mineral flow may have softened their touch. Even so, hints could remain: angles that don't fit nature's usual geometry, joints that resemble toolwork more than fracture. Then there are the stories of objects found where they shouldn't be. Anomalies discovered in mines or deep strata, carved items, odd spheres, imprints that seem to predate known human timelines. Many are errors, misreadings, or hoaxes. Some surely can be explained without invoking hidden civilizations. But even if only a sliver prove real upon re-examination, they would suggest something unsettling: that we are not the first hands to shape stone. Biology might hold clues too. A civilization living below for ages would have cultivated life suited to darkness. If fungi were domesticated, we might find species that thrive only in deep caves and carry the genetic signatures of long human selection. If insects or fish were raised in isolation, those populations might show traits of domestication changes in size, temperament, reproduction that don't fit wild evolution alone. A blind fish that seems oddly docile, an insect perfectly adapted to niches aligned with human waste or warmth. These could be living artifacts of a long partnership. Science might call them curious outliers. In another frame, they're footprints. Architecture can leave ghostly fingerprints at the surface. Many ancient sites, temples, fortresses, entire cities sit atop networks of tunnels and chambers. We often interpret those as storerooms, waterworks, escape routes. But what if some predate the structures above? Perhaps later builders discovered old tunnels and built upon them, integrating the legacy of a deeper time without fully knowing it. In that case, our oldest monuments might stand on the bones of an even older world. Language can hold sediment too. Many tongues carry words for people below, for underfolk, for hidden dwellers. Rock art offers repeating motifs, spirals, stairways, eyes that could be more than abstraction. They might be inherited symbols for descent, for entrances, for the presence of someone living underfoot. We assume metaphor. They might once have been directions. There's also the possibility of intentional erasure. If a subterranean civilization survived into periods we recognize, secrecy might have been their highest law. Entrances could be sealed, smoke carefully vented to leave minimal stains, tools hidden or destroyed, pathways camouflaged under rockfalls, arranged to look natural. If so, we'll find not the things they meant us to see, but the things they failed to hide: accidents of history, scars left by urgency. Listen too for sound. Caves and tunnels create strange acoustics, whispers that carry improbably, tones that hum at certain pitches. Geology can explain much of it, but some resonances could be design passages shaped to send a signal from one chamber to another, not unlike an ancient telephone. Even if the people are gone, the acoustic architecture might still sing when struck, a fossilized network of notes. Science gives us tools to search, but it also carries blinders. Archaeology often focuses on layers that match known timelines. Anomalies are filed away. Funding flows toward what seems plausible. We tend to find what we're prepared to see. The Earth's archive is vast. It's possible we've walked past evidence mistaking it for noise because we weren't listening for the right melody. So where might signs be hiding? In soot-blackened ceilings whose patterns repeat beyond what random torching would make? In grooves at shoulder height along walls where hands wore paths? In stacked stones that align too neatly, too often, in too many places? In tunnels under ancient cities that seem older than the cities themselves? In the genes of cave-dwelling creatures, shaped by a human presence now gone? In stories that map downward as clearly as other stories map the heavens? Maybe the proofs, if they exist, are faint to the point of vanishing. Maybe they're buried deeper than we can go. Maybe they'll never surface and still the question is worth asking. Because even without a smoking torch, the possibility reshapes how we look at the world. It invites patience. It teaches humility. It reminds us that absence of proof is not proof of absence, and that the unknown isn't empty. It's simply quiet. And that quiet leads to a final, human question. Why does this idea hold us so strongly? Why, with so little certainty, do we keep returning to stories of hidden worlds and people below? Perhaps the answer lives less in rock than in ourselves, in what mystery gives us, and in what a civilization underground reflects back about who we are. For all the tales of secret worlds, old tunnels, and civilizations that might have thrived beneath us, one question keeps returning. Why does this idea still hold us? Why do we come back to it, across myths, books, films, quiet late-night talks? There's something about imagining people below our feet that never quite lets go. Part of it is fear. The underground has always carried a tremor of unease. Caves swallow light, tunnels press in. The deeper we go, the more we feel the weight above an old animal knowledge that says, be careful. When we picture a civilization below, we aren't just imagining neighbors. We're imagining being watched from underneath. It makes the ground feel thinner, the world less settled. That fear is ancient, the memory of predators and caves, of dangers in shadow. Retold as myth, it still flickers, but fascination is braided with fear. Mystery pulls at us. A half-open door is more enticing than one standing wide. The thought of chambers stretching endlessly underfoot of cities kept out of sight invites questions that won't quit. What do they look like? What do they eat? What music drifts through their halls? The unknown is a fertile garden for imagination, and the underground may be the richest unknown of all, always there, always unseen. Imagination loves inversion. We live in light. We picture life in dark. We walk under open sky. We dream of enclosed tunnels. We depend on the sun. We wonder whether life could thrive without it. An underground civilization becomes our mirror image. In that reflection, we ask how flexible life is, how many forms survival can take, how many routes civilization could walk. Humility plays a role. If others were here before us or lived beside us, we're not the center. We're one part of a larger story threads that overlap and braid through time. That thought unsettles and fascinates at once. It reminds us the Earth's story is bigger than us, that we may not be the final word. These stories also satisfy a craving for hidden depth. Satellites map our streets. Pictures of the planet are a tap away. Mystery can feel endangered, but stone resists. We cannot see through it. Vast cave systems remain uncharted. The notion that something meaningful still hides is oddly comforting. Not everything is known. Not every question is finished. The underground reassures us that mystery survives. Myth keeps the coals glowing. Generations retell the same shapes. Shambhala and Agartha, Greek underworlds and emergence tales. Children hear them and carry them forward. Writers adapt them. Films reframe them. Over time, they stop needing proof. They survive because they resonate, because they say something true about fear, hope, and our place in the weave. The underground civilization also answers a specific loneliness. On the surface, we fight loneliness with community. In the cosmos, we fight it by dreaming up other worlds. Beneath us, we fight the loneliness of history by imagining predecessors or neighbors. If someone thrived below, then our story is larger, our company richer. The idea fills a silence we otherwise can't. These stories reflect our anxieties about ourselves. When we imagine people below, who are careful with resources, disciplined in survival, we're imagining what we often aren't. We waste, we sprawl, we take more than we give. Subterranean societies become our moral mirror humanity that learned restraint because it had to. The tale whispers a lesson. This is how you live when abundance is gone. In other versions, the underfolk are sinister hoarders, plotters, deceivers. They become our shadow, what we fear within ourselves, shaped into an other we can point to. Either way, the story is about us. There's the adventure of it too. Hidden worlds promise discovery. Who hasn't wanted to find a secret door, a lost stair, a cave leading to something extraordinary? An underground civilization is the ultimate hidden door. It says adventure isn't only in the stars or across the ocean. It might be right here, under your feet. Most of all, the idea endures because it's adaptable. It can be hopeful, haunted, spiritual, scientific. It fits ancient myth and modern fiction. It can stand for death, serve as a symbol of the unconscious, or suggest literal survival in stone. A story that can wear so many faces doesn't fade. It lasts because we can keep telling it in new ways. So why do we return to this story? Because it gives us fear and fascination, humility and mystery, comfort and reflection, and the promise of adventure all at once. Because it asks us to look beneath the surface of the earth, of ourselves, of our history, and wonder what lies hidden. And because it reminds us that no matter how much we learn, there's always more to imagine. From here, a practical question becomes an artistic one. How do we end the telling when we speak it aloud? How do we step back from the dark and return to the surface, carrying the wonder without breaking the calm? The answer lives in how we close, not with iron certainty, but with a gentle return. A soft door, not a slammed one. A tunnel that remains open in the mind. We've been wandering the shadows for a while, tracing the idea of a civilization born in darkness. A people who might have carved homes in stone, cultivated life without sunlight, and carried stories that still hum in our myths. We followed them through questions of survival, technology, memory, and imagination, always circling the same wonder. What if the first civilization lived underground? Now the story bends toward its end, the quiet work of closing the tunnel and returning to the surface without rushing, without snapping the thread, without sealing the mystery too tight. Leaving a cave is gradual in real life. At first there's only black, then a wash of faint light. Shadows sharpen. The air changes, smelling of soil and grass. Your eyes adjust, and you realize daylight was waiting all along. Ending this story should feel like that. Not a door shut, but light slowly coming back. Not an answer, but a breath. The idea of hidden civilizations reminds us something simple and important. We are curious creatures. We dig, we search, we imagine. We make stories where there might be none, and sometimes those stories point us to truths we hadn't seen. Maybe no civilization ever thrived in endless night. Maybe it's only a tale made of fear and awe. But wondering has value. It keeps mystery alive in a world that can feel over-explained. And mystery isn't the enemy of reason. It's its partner. Every discovery begins as a question that seems unlikely until it doesn't. We once thought life couldn't exist in deep oceans without sunlight. Then we found ecosystems blazing with chemical energy. We once thought cities needed rivers and fields. Then we built towers that drink through pipes and dine from distant fields. Again and again, impossible becomes unexplored. Asking whether civilizations could live underground isn't abandoning reason. It's inviting reason to carry a lamp into the dark. There's something deeply human in the thought of life below. The underground is not only a place for fear, it is also shelter. In storms and wars, in heat and cold, caves have protected us. Miners go down for work. Archaeologists sift down for memory. Children head for basements when thunder rolls. The underground is part of our story, not separate from it. When we imagine people who never left it, we imagine an alternate version of ourselves, one that chose safety when the surface felt too fierce. These stories also let us reflect on the world we've made. If survival in darkness demands balance, restraint, and cooperation, perhaps the lesson is ours to adopt. The surface is bright and wide, but resources aren't infinite. The imagined wisdom of those below, real or not, still matters. It reminds us that endurance isn't about endless growth. It's about harmony. We don't only carry lessons out of the tunnel, we carry wonder. Unmapped caves run for miles. The crust is full of quiet spaces. We may never find evidence of another civilization, but we will keep looking. If not with shovels, then with stories. Stories are how we keep the unknown alive, how we make the dark less empty. Closing the tunnel doesn't mean sealing it. It means stepping back, letting it remain open in the mind. Maybe someone will read an old myth differently tomorrow. Maybe someone will notice tool-like lines in a cave wall. Maybe someone will ask why certain passages are too straight over and over in too many places. Maybe science will stumble on something that shifts the idea from what if to what is. Or maybe that shift never comes. And that's all right. A story's worth isn't only in its proof, but in its persistence. So we return now. The air warms, shadows thin, footsteps stop echoing and become ordinary sound. The ceiling lifts, the sky comes back. Imagination doesn't close, it follows, whispering that mystery is never gone for good. Thank you for walking this path, for sitting with questions instead of sprinting to answers, for letting the dark breathe and the silence speak. If you found comfort in the pace, if the calm felt good, consider staying with this little community, coming back for more wanderings like this. And wherever you are, whatever the hour, may you find rest. May you carry a little wonder with you, and may the questions linger just enough to make tomorrow feel a touch more mysterious than today.